The first thing I noticed that night wasn't the neatly folded clothes or the half-packed hospital bag on my bed. It was the silence. A kind of silence that pressed against my ears, reminding me how alone I really was. Tomorrow morning, I'd be wheeled into the operating room, and yet here I was, packing sweatpants and slippers like it was just another business trip. I tried to distract myself by checking off the list I had taped to my dresser. Loose clothing for recovery, phone charger, toothbrush, insurance card. It was all routine, but my chest tightened anyway. Memories of the last time I went under anesthesia returned uninvited nausea, days of dizziness, the humiliating moment when I nearly collapsed in my bathroom trying to make it back to bed. My doctors had called it a normal reaction for some patients. To me, it had felt like drowning in my own body. Just as I zipped my overnight bag, my phone buzzed. For a fleeting second, warmth spread through me when I saw Mom's name on the screen. Finally, I thought, finally she's calling to check on me, maybe even to pray with me before the surgery. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to sound calm, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder. Her voice came fast, sharp, as if she had rehearsed it. "Belinda, I've been trying to reach you all day. Do you realize how important this is?" I froze, mid-fold, a pair of sweatpants dangling in my hands. Not even a hello. Not even a "how are you feeling?" "Sorry, I've been busy packing," I said carefully. "You know, getting ready for tomorrow." Yes, but listen, she barreled on your father's 60th birthday is in a few weeks. We're planning a big celebration. Everyone's flying and Uncle Paul, Aunt Meredith, even Cousin Jimmy. It's going to be huge. I shut my eyes. "Mom, I told you already. I'll be recovering. I need at least 2 weeks before I can even think about attending something like that." There was a pause. I could almost hear her teeth grinding through the line. "Belinda, do you know how hard it was to coordinate everyone's schedules? Your brother Mike begged for time off. Jessica has her kids' activities. Everyone's already booked flights. We can't change the date now." My throat tightened. "So you're saying the whole family's gathering and I won't be there? You expect me to, just what, recover alone while everyone celebrates?" "You're not dying," she snapped. "It's a routine procedure. Don't be so dramatic." I laughed bitterly. "You know anesthesia nearly wrecked me last time. You know I'll be out of it for days." Her tone softened, just slightly, but only to deliver the real blow. "Anyway, there's one more thing. We were hoping you'd cover the cost of the party, as your gift to your father." My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles ached. "What?" "The Oak Hills Country Club." She continued breezily, as if she hadn't just detonated a grenade in my chest. "The best venue, of course. And don't worry, your brother and sister can't contribute right now. They're tight on money. But you, Belinda, you have the good job, the savings. You can handle it." For a moment, I thought I might actually drop the phone. I swallowed hard. "How much are we talking about?" 50,000, she said, as if she were quoting the price of a moderately nice handbag. "At least. Anything less would be embarrassing." A bitter laugh clawed its way out of me. "You can't be serious. I can send you 10. 10,000, that's it. That's my absolute limit." Her scoff cut through me like a blade. 10, Belinda. "That's insulting. You know how much your father deserves. Don't be so stingy." Something inside me snapped. Stingy. "I'm having surgery tomorrow, Mom. I offered $10,000, and you call me stingy. You haven't even asked once if I'm scared or if I'll be okay." "You've always been selfish," she shot back. "Always thinking of yourself first. Your father only turned 60 once." I took a deep breath, willing myself not to cry, not to crumble. "Do whatever you want," I said flatly. "But I'm not paying for it, and I'm not attending." Her voice sharpened into ice. "You'll regret this." I ended the call before I could hear more. My hands shook so badly I could barely set the phone down on the nightstand. I sat there staring at the bag on my bed, wondering how a mother could weaponize her daughter's kindness so easily. The phone lit up again. "Jessica." I almost didn't answer, but exhaustion dulled my resistance. "What the hell, Belinda?" she snapped before I could even say hello. Mom's in tears. "How could you be so heartless?" I pressed the heel of my hand to my temple. "Jess, I have surgery tomorrow." Yeah, we know. But Dad's birthday is important too. Mom's under so much stress and you can't even help out a little." Before I could answer, another call buzzed through Mike. I switched over reluctantly. "Hey, brat," my brother barked. "What's this about you refusing to help with Dad's party? You're the one with the money. The least you could do is chip in. We all have obligations, Belinda." Obligations. That word echoed in my head like a curse. Within the hour, I had endured a barrage of calls, Mike's wife, Jessica, again, then my mother one more time, her voice shrill with rage. Each word piled heavier onto my chest until I could barely breathe. By the time I silenced my phone and tossed it onto the nightstand, my entire body was trembling. My hospital bag lay open, clothes spilling onto the floor, forgotten. I whispered into the silence. If they can't care about me now, what would they do if I weren't here at all? The thought lingered like smoke, dark and choking, as I finally lay down and closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. My dreams twisted between the sterile smell of hospitals and my mother's voice calling me selfish over and over. When dawn broke, pale light spilling into my room, I felt like I had already been through a war, and yet the real battle was only just beginning. The next morning blurred into a haze of antiseptic smells and fluorescent lights. I remember the nurse's calm voice as they wheeled me into the operating room, telling me to count backward from 10. I barely made it to 8 before the world dissolved into nothing. Time lost its shape after that. I floated in and out of consciousness, catching fragments, a nurse adjusting my IV drip, a doctor murmuring about my vitals hands, guiding me to the bathroom. My body felt like it was no longer mine, weighed down by anesthesia, my mind, a boat drifting unmoored in foggy waters. 3 days passed this way. I didn't know what hour it was, or even what day. But on the 4th morning, something shifted. I woke up clearer, as though a heavy curtain had been pulled from my brain. My throat was dry, my muscles weak, but I was finally present enough to want one thing, my phone. I reached for it with trembling hands, telling myself it was just to check messages. Surely someone had texted by now, maybe even visited while I was out. Surely my mother, after cooling down, had sent at least a good luck, or feel better. When the screen lit up, my breath caught. Dozens of missed calls, dozens of angry texts. I scrolled heart-thumping, but none of it said, "How are you?" or "We're here for you." Instead, the messages were demands, accusations, guilt trips, and then my banking app notifications appeared stacked one after the other like tombstones. $12, $450. Oak Hills Country Club reservation. $4, $800. Oak Hills Hotel and Spa, 5-night stay. $3, $200. Premium catering package. $5, $600. 85-inch smart TV from ElectroArt. $2, $200. Designer dress rentals. $3,800. Tuxedo rentals. $4,500. Premium bar package. $2,800. DJ and entertainment. $1,800. Airport transfers and limousine service. $8, $700. Miscellaneous charges. The list went on and on. My hands began to shake so badly the phone nearly slipped onto the sheets. "No, no, no," I whispered. My heart monitor started to beep erratically, the machine beside me blaring an alarm. Within seconds, a nurse rushed in. "Ms. Miller." "What's wrong? Breathe." I pointed to the screen, tears blurring my vision. "My money. Someone took my money." The nurse gently took the phone from me, scrolling through the endless charges. Her expression tightened. "You need to calm down. Your blood pressure's spiking dangerously. We'll get this under control, okay?" But the truth had already slammed into me with full force. I knew exactly who it was. My mother. 3 years ago, when Dad had lost his job and they were on the verge of losing the house, I had given her access to my account for emergencies. She'd used it sparingly back then, 3 mortgage payments, maybe 4. I had forgotten about it afterward, trusting she wouldn't touch it again. I should have revoked it. And now, while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed, she had drained me dry. My chest tightened, rage and betrayal colliding inside me. I pulled up the family group chat. The messages were there, loud and mocking. Plans for Dad's big day, casual mentions of my money, as if it were theirs to spend. Summoning what little strength I had, I pressed the call button next to my mother's name. My thumb trembled against the screen as it rang. She answered briskly, her tone almost impatient. "Belinda, I'm really busy right now. Can I call you back?" I forced my voice low, steady, though it trembled with fury. "What have you done?" A pause. "Excuse me. The $50,000 you stole from my account." My voice cracked, but I pressed on. "For Dad's party. Don't you dare deny it." There was silence on the line, broken only by the beeping of my monitor. Finally, she sighed the way she always did when I was being difficult. "This is your fault, Belinda. If you had just agreed to help us, we wouldn't have had to take matters into our own hands. We didn't steal. We simply used what you should have been willing to give." I gripped the phone so tightly I felt my incision ache. "Cancel everything. Now." "That's not going to happen," she replied coolly. "Your father deserves this party, and it will go forward as planned." If you weren't so selfish, if you don't cancel, I will. Her voice sharpened. You wouldn't dare. You'd turn your entire family against you. A bitter laugh escaped me. A real family doesn't steal from their daughter while she's lying in a hospital bed. I ended the call before she could answer and opened my banking app. My fingers moved with icy precision as I canceled every transaction I could, one by one. The TV, the tuxedos, the bar package. For the charges that had already processed, I called each company directly reporting them as fraudulent, demanding immediate cancellations. My voice was hoarse, my body weak, but rage kept me upright. Every confirmation email was linked to my mother's inbox. Soon she would be flooded with notices of her precious plans unraveling. An hour later, my phone rang. Mom again. I answered, holding the device at arm's length as her shrieking voice filled the room. What have you done? How could you do this to us? How could I do this to you? I hissed, pulling the phone back to my ear. You stole $50,000 from me while I was unconscious. You didn't visit me once. Not once. And you dare accuse me of betrayal? You've humiliated us, she screamed. The country club called, the caterers called. Everyone knows we can't pay. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I closed my eyes, exhaustion finally winning. I'm still in the hospital, Mom. Still recovering. And all you care about is your reputation. I don't care, she shouted, her voice raw. You fix this, right now. Or what I said, my tone icy calm. You'll steal more from me. Good luck with that. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on her with no intention of calling back. My hands trembled as I blocked her number. One by one, I added Mike, Jessica, their spouses, all of them to the list. My family tree was vanishing from my phone, severed branch by branch. The door opened. My doctor stepped in, his eyes flicking to the monitor, then to my pale face. Your blood pressure is concerning, he said gently. He noticed the phone in my lap. I think we should hold on to this for a while. I handed it over without protest. No family visitors. I added my voice quiet but firm. No exceptions. The doctor nodded gravely. Understood. As he left, I sank into the pillows, a strange mixture of grief and relief washing over me. My savings were nearly gone. My body was weak. But for the first time, a thought rooted itself deep inside me. I would never let them use me like this again. The first 2 days after I blocked their numbers were eerily quiet. My room felt sealed off from the world, the only sounds the rhythmic beep of machines and the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes in the hallway. For the first time since the surgery, I began to breathe more easily. But peace, I should have known, was only temporary. It started with voices in the corridor, muffled at first, then rising sharp and furious. My heart clenched the moment I recognized them, my mother's shrill tone cutting through the sterile hospital air. What do you mean we can't see her? She's our daughter. I closed my eyes, pressing my palms against my ears, but it was no use. Every word landed like a hammer against my skull. Mrs. Miller came, the doctor's steady voice calm yet firm. Your daughter needs rest. She specifically requested no visitors. This is ridiculous. My father's voice now deep and thunderous. We need to speak with her. There are urgent family matters to resolve. Urgent family matters. The words made me want to laugh, bitter and hollow. I had been sliced open on an operating table, fighting to heal, and their urgent matter was money. Always money. I'm sorry, sir, the doctor replied evenly, but your daughter's health comes first. Whatever this is can wait. No, my mother snapped, her voice climbing. It absolutely cannot wait. She's done something terrible. We need to fix it immediately. The floor seemed to tilt under me. I had done something terrible. That was their story now. Not that they had drained my savings, not that they had stolen while I lay helpless, but that I was the villain. She's lying to you. Jessica's voice rang out sharper than I remembered. Whatever she's told you about us, it isn't true. Tears burned my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. Lying. That was always their fallback. If reality didn't suit them, they twisted it until I was the problem, the selfish one, the dramatic one. You need to leave, this doctor said more firmly now. Your behavior is disruptive, and it's jeopardizing her recovery. We're not going anywhere, Mike barked. We're her family. We have a right to see her. There was a sudden commotion, a chair scraping hurried footsteps. Then the doctor's voice again louder, controlled, but with steel beneath it. Security to the 3rd floor, please. The next moments unfolded like a nightmare. Shouts escalated, overlapping voices tangled with the low, commanding tones of security officers. I heard my mother's protest, my father's booming outrage, Jessica's screeching denial. The sounds blurred together until I could picture them clearly. My family, red-faced and furious, fighting to claw their way into a room where they weren't wanted. And not because they were worried about me, not because they loved me, because I had cut off their access to my money. I curled deeper into the bed, pulling the blanket over my head like a child hiding from a storm. My incision throbbed with each frantic beat of my heart. I wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the sterile sheets and never resurface. Minutes later, silence fell, then a gentle knock at my door. The doctor stepped in, his expression apologetic but resolute. "Sorry about that, Ms. Miller." Security escorted them out. "They won't be allowed back in." My throat was too tight to answer at first. Finally, I whispered, "Thank you." He gave me a kind smile. "You did the right thing asking for no visitors. Your body needs to heal and stress doesn't help. Try to rest." When he left, I stared at the ceiling, the fluorescent lights glaring down on me. I should have felt relief. Instead, a heavy ache pressed against my ribs. That was my family out there, my own blood, fighting not for me, but against me. Memories I had buried long ago began to resurface. Birthdays when I bought my own cake because Mom forgot. High school prom when Dad refused to pay for my dress, calling it a waste of money, so I wore a thrifted gown and smiled through the humiliation. College tuition bills where I begged them for help only to be told, "You're smart, figure it out." And yet somehow when they needed something, I was always the first they called. Roof repairs, car down payments, loans that were never repaid. I had convinced myself those were just struggles of an ordinary family, that they loved me in their own way, that giving was my role and their dismissals were just their way of coping with stress. But lying in that hospital bed, listening to them scream in the hallway like entitled strangers, I finally saw the truth. They hadn't changed. I had. I was no longer the daughter who handed over money just to keep the peace, no longer the sister who let insults roll off my back in the name of family harmony, no longer the safety net for people who had never once cared about my safety. Something in me solidified that day, like steel cooling into shape. My chest still ached, but my mind sharpened with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. If I survived this surgery, if I got out of this hospital alive, I would never be the same daughter again. The silence that followed was heavy but different now. Not oppressive, not lonely. It was the silence of a door, slamming shut, of a chapter ending. For the first time in decades, I began to imagine what life might look like without them in it. And the thought didn't scare me. It gave me hope. The day I was discharged from the hospital, the air outside felt different. Brighter, sharper, almost too clean after weeks of recycled hospital oxygen. I clutched my discharge papers in one hand, a bag of medications in the other, and told myself I was ready. The taxi ride home passed in a blur. My neighborhood looked exactly the same, neatly trimmed hedges, kids' bicycles leaning against garage doors, neighbors watering lawns, but I felt like I'd crossed some invisible border. I wasn't the same Belinda who had left this house before surgery. Inside my living room smelled faintly of dust and lavender. The silence wrapped around me thick and still. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe I'd have a few days to rest, to breathe, to just exist in this fragile new skin of mine. I was wrong. The doorbell rang the very next morning. When I opened it, my parents stood there, arms crossed, faces grim. No flowers, no casseroles, no tentative, "How are you feeling?" Just two figures who looked more like debt collectors than family. "Can we come in?" my father asked stiffly. His tone wasn't a request, it was a demand. I stepped aside, my stomach tightening, and let them enter. But I didn't offer them seats. They stood in the center of my living room, surveying the space like it belonged to them. My mother spoke first, her voice clipped. "We need to talk about what you did." I swallowed the rising anger. What I did? "You humiliated us," she continued, her eyes flashing. "The country club, the caterers, everyone in town knows now." Do you understand how embarrassing that was? I stared at her, the disbelief so sharp it was almost funny. "I stopped you from stealing my money. That's what I did." "It wasn't stealing," my father cut in, his jaw tight. "It was borrowing. We would have paid you back." A bitter laugh tore from my throat. "Like the $70,000 for your roof repairs Jessica's car. Mike's wedding. Tell me, when exactly were you planning to pay those back?" For the first time, they faltered. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father looked away. "That was different," Mom finally muttered. "Those were gifts." "No," I said sharply, my voice gaining strength. "They were loans you never intended to repay. You've treated me like your personal bank for years. And now, while I was unconscious in a hospital bed, you helped yourselves again." Her face shifted suddenly, her anger softening into a familiar performance. Teary eyes, quivering lips, a tremor in her voice. Sweetheart, we understand you were upset. You missed your father's birthday. We know you're tired, but don't you see? We only wanted to honor him. We only wanted... Don't! I raised a hand, cutting her off. My incision throbbed with the movement, but I didn't care. Don't use that voice with me. Not anymore. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her eyes hardened like stone. My father cleared his throat, stepping in again. We're willing to forgive what you did, Belinda, if you compensate us for the embarrassment. 20,000 should cover it. I blinked. Forgive me. Compensate you. A laugh burst from my chest, sharp and humorless. It pulled at my stitches, but I couldn't stop. You want me to pay you for stealing from me? You need to be reasonable, Mom pleaded. Suddenly louder, more frantic. Your father's reputation. I moved to the front door and gripped the knob with trembling hands. My body was weak, but my voice was iron. Out, both of you. Get out of my house. Belinda, don't be dramatic, my father tried again, his voice rising. We are your parents. And what does that mean? I snapped. Parents who never visited me in the hospital. Parents who emptied my savings while I was under anesthesia. Parents who cared more about a party than whether their daughter lived or died. If that's what being your daughter means, then I'm done. My mother's eyes widened, real tears forming now. Whether from shock or fear, I couldn't tell. You don't mean that. I opened the door and pointed outside. I've never meant anything more. We're strangers now. Goodbye. They hesitated, as if waiting for me to crumble to soften the way I always had. But I didn't. I stood there, jaw set, door open, until they finally stepped out into the daylight. For a long moment, I watched them walk away, their silhouettes shrinking down the sidewalk. I half expected guilt to come rushing in to drown me as it always did. But it didn't. Instead, I felt something else, something I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. Lightness, as if I had been carrying a mountain on my back for years and had finally set it down. I closed the door softly, leaned against it, and pressed a hand to my still healing incision. The pain was real sharp, but it was nothing compared to the weight I had just shed. This was no longer their house to walk into whenever they wanted. This was no longer their daughter to manipulate whenever they pleased. For once, this life belonged to me, and I wasn't going back. The morning after I threw my parents out, my house felt different. The walls, once heavy with obligation and memories, seemed to echo with a strange emptiness. Every creak in the floorboards, every shadow in the corners whispered the same thing. You can leave now. I sat on the couch, a blanket draped over my shoulders, staring at the half-empty pill bottles lined neatly on the coffee table. Painkillers for my incision, antibiotics, anti-nausea meds. They dulled the physical ache but couldn't quiet the storm inside me. For years, my life had revolved around one axis. What does my family need? Roof repairs, tuition, car loans, a down payment for Mike's wedding venue. I gave until giving felt like breathing, automatic, unquestioned, essential. And now, stripped bare of illusions, I saw the truth. I had been nothing but their safety net. Not a daughter, not a sister, just a means to an end. The thought hardened into resolve. By the time the sun rose higher, spilling light across my living room, I knew what I had to do. Seattle. My boss had offered me the transfer for years, dangling it like a golden key I was too afraid to grasp. You'd be perfect for leading the new team, he'd say. And I'd smile, shake my head, and tell him I can't leave my family. Now that excuse felt absurd. I picked up my phone, fresh wiped clean of blocked numbers and old group chats, and drafted an email. Remember that transfer offer? Is it still open? The reply came back within minutes. Always open for you. Everything okay? I stared at the glowing screen, my chest tight but steady. It will be, I typed back. I'm ready for a change. That same afternoon, I called a real estate agent. Within a week, a for sale sign pierced the front lawn, bright red against the trimmed grass. My neighbors stared as they walked their dogs, some even stopping to ask why. I smiled, vague and polite, just ready for something new. Inside, packing boxes began to replace furniture. The process felt brutal yet cleansing. Every drawer I emptied, every shelf I cleared, reminded me how much of my life had been spent collecting things to impress people who never really saw me. By the second week, I had stopped answering unknown numbers altogether. My voicemail filled with messages, my mother's voice swinging wildly between rage and sobs, Mike accusing me of abandoning the family, Jessica spitting venom about how I'd ruined Dad's birthday. At one point, Jessica's husband called too, trying to play mediator, saying, "Look, you know how they are. Just give them something to calm things down." I deleted it all, and still the calls came, until one day they didn't. The silence was almost louder than the noise. It was Ellie who broke it. My cousin had always been different, quieter, kinder, someone who didn't treat me like an ATM. She called one evening, her voice gentle. "Belinda, how are you feeling? I've been so worried." The words hit harder than I expected. I had braced myself for more demands, more manipulation, but concern. Genuine concern. It cracked something in me. "I'm doing better," I admitted. "Stronger." "I'm glad," she said softly. "Listen, I thought you should know what happened at the birthday dinner." I sat straighter. "Dinner?" "Yeah. After everything fell apart, they just had it at your parents' house. Nothing fancy, just food and cake." I let out a bitter laugh. "So after draining me dry for a country club bash, they settled for a potluck." Ellie hesitated. "That's not all. They spent most of the night talking about you, calling you selfish, greedy, unstable. Jessica told everyone you had a breakdown after surgery, that you're cutting ties because you lost your mind." My stomach dropped. Of course she did. Aunt Martha and Uncle Jim actually left early. Ellie continued. "They couldn't stand it. Said it wasn't right the way your mom and dad kept tearing into you." I swallowed hard, guilt and fury colliding inside me. They'll rewrite the story however they want. They always do. In their version, I'm the villain. Never mind the money. Never mind the surgery. Ellie was quiet for the long moment. Then she said, "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." Her words were a lifeline I didn't realize I needed. We stayed on the phone for an hour talking about everything and nothing. For once, I wasn't defending myself or explaining why I couldn't do more. I was just me, and she cared anyway. After we hung up, I walked through my half-empty house, pausing in each room. The kitchen where I'd hosted countless family dinners. The living room where Mike sprawled on my couch after his divorce, where Jessica's kids tore into Christmas presents I bought. My bedroom, where I lay awake at night, wondering how to make everyone happy. I pressed my hand against the doorframe and whispered no more. It wasn't sadness that came, it was relief. Every box sealed was a goodbye. Every empty wall was freedom. And with each step forward, I felt myself unraveling from them, stitch by stitch. But more importantly, I was beginning to rebuild. Seattle greeted me with gray skies and the scent of rain in the air, but to me, it felt like sunlight. The city pulsed with energy, streets lined with coffee shops, the sound of gulls circling over Puget Sound, the quiet hum of possibility around every corner. My new apartment wasn't large, but the view stole my breath. Water stretching wide ferries, drifting like toys, mountains rising in the distance. For the first time in years, I unpacked boxes without dread. These walls were mine alone. No one would knock on the door demanding money. No one would guilt me into giving up my last ounce of energy. The Seattle office welcomed me like an old friend. My boss, Mark, introduced me to the team with a grin. "Belinda's the one I've been bragging about for months. She'll whip this department into shape." And I did. Slowly, carefully, but with a focus I hadn't felt in years. Late nights were no longer about fielding family phone calls. They were about building campaigns, mentoring younger employees, celebrating small wins. Each accomplishment stitched me closer to the version of myself I thought I had lost, the ambitious, capable woman who once believed she deserved more than being her family's crutch. Weeks melted into months. I built a rhythm: mornings with coffee by the window, evenings walking the waterfront, weekends exploring Pike Place Market or losing myself in bookstores. For the first time, my life belonged to me. And then, one afternoon in the office cafeteria, everything shifted again. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up to find a man balancing a tray, an apologetic smile tugging at his lips. Every other table's full. "Go ahead," I said, gesturing to the seat across from me. His name was Daniel. He worked in product development, and before I knew it, our lunch stretched into 2 hours. He asked questions that weren't shallow small talk about my favorite books, why I chose marketing, what I loved most about the city so far. He listened, really listened, as though every word mattered. By the end, he cleared his throat and said almost shyly, "So, would you like to grab dinner this weekend?" Dating had never been my priority. I had been too busy putting out fires, too entangled in my family's endless demands. But with Daniel, something felt different. Easy. Our first dinner turned into a second, then a third. He made me laugh, real unguarded laughter that echoed in my chest, like a song I hadn't sung in years. He noticed when I was tired, respected when I needed space. On our fifth date, I decided to tell him the truth. We were sitting on a park bench overlooking the water, the city lights flickering behind us. I took a deep breath. "There's something you should know. about my family. He didn't interrupt, he didn't rush me, he just waited. I told him everything. The surgery, the money, the years of being used, manipulated, drained. My voice shook, my eyes stung, but I laid it bare. I braced myself for judgment, for the inevitable advice. You should reconcile. They're still your family. When I finally fell silent, Daniel reached over and covered my hand with his. They didn't deserve you, Belinda. 4 words, that was all. But they anchored me more than any lecture could have. I stared at him, my throat tight. You really think so? He smiled soft but sure. I know so. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who chooses you, who values you. And from what you've told me, they chose themselves every time. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from release. We sat there hand in hand, the waves crashing softly against the shore. For the first time, I felt what it meant to be seen, not as a provider, not as a daughter who could fix everything, but as a woman worth caring for. Ellie called me a few weeks later. Her voice carried a warning. Your mom asked me again for your new address. Said she needs to speak to you in person. I told her I didn't know. Thank you, I whispered, my chest tightening. She won't stop, Belinda. They'll try again someday. I know, I said quietly, glancing at Daniel, who was cooking in my tiny kitchen, humming off key. But this time I'll be ready. Seattle was not just a new chapter. It was a new book. And for the first time, I was the one holding the pen. A year after the surgery, I hardly recognized the woman in the mirror. The scar was still there, faint but permanent, a pale reminder across my skin. Yet when I traced it with my fingertips, I no longer felt weakness. I felt strength. The Seattle office had become my second home. My team thrived under my guidance, and 3 months ago, I'd been promoted, an achievement celebrated with champagne laughter and genuine pride from people who wanted nothing from me but my presence. That night, I stood in the center of a crowded restaurant, colleagues raising glasses, Daniel's hand warm at my back. When they toasted to me, I lifted my glass high. To second chances, I said my voice steady, and to learning that family isn't always blood. The words didn't tremble, they rang true. Afterward, as we walked along the waterfront, Daniel slipped his fingers through mine. Do you ever regret it? He asked softly. Cutting ties. Yeah. His eyes searched mine, not accusing, just curious. I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss who I thought they were. The version of mom who braided my hair before school. The dad who used to cheer at my soccer games. But I don't miss who they actually are. The people who drained me dry and called me selfish when I couldn't give more. He nodded, understanding without the need for more words. That was one of the things I loved about him. He didn't push, didn't prod. He simply walked beside me. A week later, Ellie texted me. Your mom asked for your number again. Said there's a family emergency. I didn't give it, but thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long moment, waiting for the familiar rush of panic, the guilt that had once shackled me. It didn't come. Instead, calm spread through me like warm water. Thanks for telling me, I typed back. I'm sure they'll handle it without my checkbook. That night, Daniel and I walked the pier, the city glowing behind us. The air was cool, the water restless. He squeezed my hand. Penny for your thoughts. I smiled faintly. I was just thinking how peaceful it is here. Not just Seattle, my life. You seem happier than when you first got here, he said. More relaxed. I admitted. I stopped looking out at the dark horizon. For the first time, I'm living for myself. The truth was, my life had blossomed in ways I never imagined once I stopped pouring myself into people who only saw me as a resource. My career thrived. I had real friendships. I had Daniel. But most importantly, I had peace. Sometimes I wondered if my family ever reflected on what they lost. Not the money, me. Did they ever sit at their kitchen table and think about the daughter who used to show up with casseroles with checks with unconditional help? Did they realize that version of Belinda was gone? Somehow I doubted it. In their story, I was still the villain, the selfish one, the ungrateful one. But in mine, I was the woman who finally saved herself. And that made all the difference.